Welcome to this tutorial on programming vectors in processing. In the last tutorial, we learned how to draw a line, make the line thicker with stroke weight, and use stroke to color the line. In order to color a line, you need to use hexadecimal numbers as shown with this number here, which gives you an orangish color. If you want to find other hexadecimal numbers, you can look online at a hexadecimal chart. In this lesson, we're going to look at drawing other shapes like ellipses, which can be used to draw circles, and rectangles, which can also be used to draw squares. So I'm going to move this little bit of this PowerPoint in your view, because I want to point out that the processing system works on a grid system. These are Cartesian coordinate systems, and in this case here, which you probably learned in 8th grade math, 0 is in the center, and this is positive, positive in the top right corner, negative, positive in the bottom right, negative, negative in the bottom left, and positive, negative in the upper left. In the processing system, 0, 0 happens to be at the top left. And so we're continually working in the positive, negative quadrant. Okay. So I'm going to move this back out. And we're going to program a simple ellipse. So we'll type in ellipse, and then ellipse is going to be made by the x and y point on the ellipse. So we'll try 120, 120, and the next two values tell you its width and its height. So we'll say 50 and 100. Close our method and with a parentheses and end in a semicolon. Go up here and click the Run button at the top. You can see the ellipse centers at approximately 80, 80, 50 width, and 100 height. If we go back to our method, we can change one of the parameters. Let's make the width 120. So our ellipse is wider. We'll run it again. Now you can see that it's still at the same position, but it's 80 and 80. And then it's 120 wide and 100 high. Okay, I'm going to close off that window by clicking the X. The other shape that we can draw is a square or a rectangle. And the rectangle works off of either the center point or the corners, which I'll demonstrate each. So I'm going to type in the method rect for rectangle, and then I need the top left points, which again we will use 80 and 80, and the bottom right points of the corner, which might be 230 and 250. We'll end with the parentheses, and then we'll type in the semicolon to end the statement. Let's go ahead and run the rectangle. Now you can see that the rectangle has been drawn on top of our ellipse. Okay, let's close that off. Another way with either of the ellipse or the rectangle is to specify the mode. So if we want a corner mode on our ellipse, we can type in rect mode, parentheses, corners, close parentheses and semicolon. And then for our ellipse, we can actually do center, which is the opposite. So we'll say rect and then center. And then close that off with a parentheses and a semicolon. I'm sorry, I need rect. Notice it's giving me an error, and I need rect mode instead of rect for the center. Now when I draw these two, their positions will have changed because one I'm using the center and the other one I'm using the corners. So if I want center mode to be just the rectangle to show up, I might move the center point farther down. So I might say 150 and 150. Now I'm also moving it to the right. I'll run it again, and now my square is in the middle. Now the reason we don't see the ellipse is because the square is being drawn on top of it. So this is the draw order, and processing draws the first item and then the second item on top of the first item if they intersect. So if we want the ellipse to appear on top of the square, we need to move it below the rectangle or square. And then we can hit run again. And now you can see that the ellipse is on top of the square, producing maybe some kind of modern art piece where there's a hole in the wall. Alright, so then if we want to add color to these objects, we can do something like we did before, where we want to fill the rectangle. So we'll go above the rectangle mode, and we'll type in fill, parentheses, and this is where we type in our hexadecimal number. So I'm just going to take one at random. And then close off, make sure it's 6 numbers and or letters, and then end with the parentheses and a semicolon. And now I will see down here in my console window I have no errors, so it should run okay. And now I've filled the rectangle. Now if I have a white background and I want to make it look like there's a hole in this square or rectangle, then I can fill that ellipse with white. So I can go down here after ellipse, and I did make a mistake up here with this because this should be ellipse mode and not rect mode. And then here I can say fill. And I can put in 255 for white like we did in the first example. And it looks like our ellipse is off a bit. So, oh well, because our values are so close to each other. That's why it looks like a line. So we can do, if we want the top left corner to be 120 and 120, and then the bottom would have to be like 200 and 200. That will fix it for the bottom left. We could also change the stroke weight of the ellipse. So we could say something like stroke weight, and then 3 to make the outline of the ellipse thicker, like so. And finally, if we don't want to fill, we can type in something like no fill. So maybe we want to do no fill, and then we want to do another ellipse. And this time it's at 150 and 170, X and Y location, and then it's 80 wide and 100 high. And then we can run this and see what we end up with. And there you have one circle that's filled with white and one ellipse or circle that doesn't have a fill. Alright, so that's the end of this tutorial on working with circles and rectangles.